You're listening to Out of the Box with Rosie Tran. Out of the Box is sponsored by hugmecheese.com. Spread love, give a hug, hugmecheese.com. Guys, we are on Stitcher, iTunes, and SoundCloud, but we don't have that many followers on SoundCloud, and it's a very sad page. So go on soundcloud.com/outoftheboxpodcast and click on the follow button and give us a couple more followers. Our listenership has been growing on SoundCloud, but our followers are still sad. Sad face. So as always, if you enjoy the podcast, go on iTunes.com, Out of the Box Podcast, and click on the subscribe button. Subscribers also make us very, very, very happy. I am excited today because I have a very funny comedian, veteran comedian, national headliner, and also he's working on a self-help book to be released soon. Jackson Perdue. Jackson, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you for having me on the fabulous Rosie Tran show.
Jackson looks scared, like he's been locked into a Hello Kitty dungeon because I have my Hello Kitty balloons over his head from my recent birthday. And he's probably wondering why a grown woman has Hello Kitty balloons, but that's between me and my Hello Kitty
I know
obsession.
Asian women, so I'm not surprised at all. As a matter of fact, when I came in and said, hey, where's the Hello Kitty stuff? And then there it was.
I wanted to talk to you about a couple things because we shared some interest. Jackson and I just did a gig together, and he was talking in the car about a lot of the stuff that I preach on the podcast, which is personal development, self-help, and kind of healing yourself instead of going to the external world. And you mentioned something about living the aloha life as your goal and your aspiration. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, for me, living aloha, aloha means unconditional love. You know, aloha is such a beautiful word. I'm into language because, you know, if you could language something, if you could name it, you could aspire to be that thing. You know, so actually I keep a spiritual vocabulary in my little journal and aspire to be those things. But aloha means unconditional love, and it's such a beautiful word, and it's used as a greeting and, you know, goodbye. So that's saying I love you unconditionally as you come and go. Namaste is probably the closest thing to that. I mean, we have nothing in the English language that, you know,
that sums it up like that.
Yeah, it's like, hey, what's up? You know, that's what we got here, right? So living aloha is about living unconditional love, you know. So, and unconditional love means unconditional love. You know, your dog knows about it. You don't know about it, but you know, that's and living my highest truth. And my prayer is that, you know, I pray that, you know, to be the best me that I could be so I can serve in the best and highest way. And so that's my thing.
You talked about switching from the sales model to the service model. And I talked a little bit about this in the car, but so for those of you listeners who don't know, I think I talked about this on another podcast. I'm not sure if it was my podcast or another podcast, but I talked about shifting from being a performer and getting attention for myself, which you talked about as a sales model, and shifting into service, which is I decided, hey, you know, it's not just going to be about me. I'm going to be bringing people love and happiness and joy through laughter and performing instead of doing stand-up to get laughter and attention for myself. And I think the way you explained it was really eloquent. And
yeah, and that's and what you just described, and that's called giving a performance. That's a very altruistic place to be, because otherwise you're not giving a performance. You're there to get the laughs. Hey, they're not giving me the laugh. You know, they're not giving me. So therefore, I have to be frustrated, angry, and pissed. And that's that language of the ego. The language of the ego says, if I don't get what I want right now, I therefore have to be angry and frustrated and desperate and like that. And that's what happens when the laughs aren't coming, and you're in that mode of thinking. So the flop sweat comes. But when you're giving a performance and you're just giving it away, and you're not result minded, you know, then you're not sweating it out, you know, and, you know, they could laugh or they could not laugh. And that's the same with love. You know, you give somebody some love. If they don't return it, fine, you know, because it's never a mistake to love somebody or love something, you know, it's going to come back to you in a different form, maybe not the one you want it from, but it will come back. And with the love thing, I say that you have to be a love billionaire and give it away. And that's how you are sure that nobody's going to steal it or take it from you, you know. And it depends how, because the only love that you have to give anybody is your overflow. You know, if you don't have self-love, you have no love to give anybody. You know, the stuff that's overflowing on the top of your head, that's the stuff that you share with other people. But with the whole, and that's one of the reasons I agreed to do your podcast when you articulated that to me, because that's so, that's so unusual. And I think that's a real higher consciousness place. So, kudos to you for being in that place. But as I told you then, for me, who's been doing this for 36, 7 years, you have to change your definition of success if you want to keep doing it and stay sane. Because, again, when you first start, it's all about ego. It's all about, I'm going to, get my TV show. I'm going to get my movie.
So it's kind of like taking the arrow and reversing it from having the arrow of energy point towards you to having it point out. You're pouring it out. You're giving. You're pushing the energy in an opposite direction. You're not necessarily changing anything about your personality. You're just changing the flow of the energy, right? It's
all about the flow of energy, and that's what it is when you are really cooking on stage. It's that exchange of energy. It's like a good tennis game or ping pong game. You're hitting it, they're hitting it right back to you. You bang, 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 bang. Man, that's exciting. That's great. That's good for them. That's good for you. That's a win-win. But the thing is, sometimes you're just not going to get a crowd that's responding how you'd like them to respond for whatever reason. And I say there's a type A crowd and a type B crowd. The type A crowd, they're real, vocal and loud. And they laugh, out loud, and they're having a great time. There's a type B crowd. They're just not that verbal or vocal. They're just kind of mellow, but they're having just as good a time as the type A crowd. And if you stop and go, hey, man, you guys suck, and blah, 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 they're going, hey, what's this guy talking about? We're having a great time,
I learned that lesson. I did a show where this guy really looked like he was going to rush me on stage. He looked pissed. He looked miserable. And this is when I really learned about my judgments. I got off stage and I confronted him. I said, look, sir, you didn't laugh at anything I said. Like, what's going on? And he actually thanked me and said that he really needed the laugh and he had had a horrible day. He said, I couldn't bring myself to smile. I was judging him, thinking he was judging me. He hated me. Yes. He thought I was awful. And he actually thanked me and said I brightened up his day, and he just had one of the worst days ever, and he couldn't bring himself to physically laugh.
Well, yeah. See, my story on that, I was working on the East Coast, and there was this Indian family, Hindus, sitting in the front. They did not laugh or smile at one word I said. And I was going to bust them on it, but, fuck that. Let me just keep going, applaud. I just totally shined it on. So I get off stage. I'm talking to the owner of the club. They come up. I think they're going to say what a bad time they had or whatever to the owner. They're like, you changed our lives. That's exact verbatim. That's what they said. You changed our lives. What? It was fantastic. They were just overflowing with kudos. I'm like, oh my God. Where were you when I needed you? And even now, sometimes, when you get off, you don't think you did that well, and people applaud heartily.
Yeah, or you get a standing ovation or something like, "What are you guys watching the same show I was?"
Yeah, where were you when I needed? But that's the thing about being a communicator. You never, and I mean never, know how this stuff is resonating with somebody out there. You never. I mean, I've had people come up and thank me for saying certain things, and again, you just never know. I know when I talk about no sex in the marriage and all that kind of real uncomfortable stuff, I know it's hitting home. I know it's resonating. I know people are going, hey, I can't laugh at this shit. Not when I'm, this is too true for us. And I've had people come to me, were you in our bedroom? It's like you were sitting on our bed. You've been sitting on our bed, listening, so... It's like that, So but again, you never know how anything resonates. But you gotta put your thing out there, and And now I find I feel freer as a performer when I sometimes think of myself as a teacher more than a comic. Mm-hmm. Then it gives me in my own head more license to say some things I want to say that aren't necessarily ha-ha funny, but points I want to make. Because as a comic, there's all kinds of different kinds of comics. And who was it that said, it was Mark Twain said that, I'm paraphrasing here. He said, when you're a humorist, if you're a preacher and a teacher, you're fucked. But if you're not a preacher and a teacher, if you're not those things, you'll never be remembered. So it's that paradox that, you have to walk that line of saying something and then not being too heavy. Like, that was always the dilemma for me, to walk that line, to learn how to walk that line. It's not, when you have a truth to say, you don't want to feel like you're coming down off the fucking mountain, with a tablet laid in. There it is. So I've been up to the mountain. Here's the tablet. This is it. But kind of just be able to come down with the truth and just kind of set it on the table like your car keys, and let your dog come up, let him come up and sniff it and go, yeah, okay, yeah, kind of, like you put the pill in some hamburger when you feed your dog, put the message in the hamburger,
cheese, right?
yeah, and then feed it to him that way, But speaking your truth is the thing,
A lot of comics do that, and I gotta, I really like that. Sometimes I've seen some urban comics who, it seems kind of like they're doing ghetto humor, but then you listen to what they're saying, they're really making some political points or some socio-political points, and they're just kind of, like you said, sugarcoating it a certain way or making it seem a certain way, and I like that. I want to mention something that we talked about in the car, because you're talking about, again, reversing the energy from taking to putting out, and we talked about, how important that energy shift is, because you and I, you've obviously been in the business a lot longer than I have, but I've been in the business long enough to see certain friends or colleagues of mine rise to the top very quickly and then sometimes fall very quickly. And if you're in that take model, it doesn't matter how much fame, how much success you have, it's never going to be enough, because you're trying to fill a void as a comedian when the arrow of energy is going towards you. In the ego, feeding the ego.
Well, as we discussed in the car about The Power of Now, which is, one of my secular Bibles and one of the books that really changed my life. Here's my favorite quote about books. They say a good book entertains you, and a superior book entertains you and educates you, but a great book changes who you are. And that's what The Power of Now did for me. That book really changed my life. And
he's talking about The Power of Now from Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah, and it's just really regurgitated Zen philosophy. That's just really old. But I got off track. What were we saying?
You were talking about how awesome books will change your life, and I was talking about how no matter how much fame.
Oh, yeah. So what Eckhart Tolle says, one of the things, the main takeaways I take from The Power of Now is that when he says no external will ever be your salvation. Nothing outside of yourself. I mean, happiness and fulfillment is an inside-out job. So no check, no gig, no sex, no nothing outside of yourself will ever fulfill you. And if
it's temporary. It does fill you, but very temporary.
Very temporarily. But, you just have to look at, history. And if being rich and famous made you happy, then Marilyn Monroe and Elvis Presley would have been the happiest people who ever fucking lived on this planet. Who's any richer, or who had all the externals? They were richer, better looking and more famous than anybody. And they were both fucking miserable. They died young, and they both died unhappy. So, again, you have to define what success means to you. Here, Michael Jackson, one of the greatest artists on stage, but you know what? He knew nothing about the art of living well. Because the guy could not fucking sleep. When you can't sleep at night, then you're not living right. So he was a terrible artist off stage. He didn't know about the art of living, which is and you're more off stage than you are on stage. So it would behoove you to know what to do off stage. And apparently he didn't know that, because he came to his own demise, and that shit he had to propofol he had to drink every night.
I think a lot of these people have a desire, and this goes into your book. They have the desire to love and give and share, but they just don't know how to do it. Like Michael Jackson, if you listen to the second half of his career, because he wanted to do inspirational music, and he said, well, I'm going to do pop music first because nobody's going to buy this inspirational crap. And the second half of his career, Black and White, We Are the World, all this stuff, it was all inspirational and positive towards the world, because he really wanted to give a positive message, yet he wasn't healed and whole inside, and that's why it kind of didn't work out. And the same thing with some of these other celebrities who have committed suicide. They really wanted in their heart to have this positive message or to push this positive thing, but that they themselves inside weren't whole and healed and fixed, quote unquote. So they really didn't know what they were doing. And you talk about this with the relationships.
Well, again, what I wrote in my book called Man on Fire, and that title is from a Buddhist quote that says a man should not seek enlightenment unless he seeks it like a man on fire seeks a bucket of water. So
with passion, right?
Yeah, you have to have a real sense of urgency. Buddha said, "Hey, don't fucking waste my time, dude. Come to me, really wanting to know this shit, or take a walk." So I came to it like that because the subtitle of my book is the Manual to Survive a Broken Heart, because it was unprecedented that I had this broken heart, and I mean I was in so much pain that I had to run down the street like Richard Pryor, like I was on fire, and I actually start to howl like a wounded dog because just to get that pain off me, it felt like there was an entity on me, like I was literally on fire. I mean,
the pain body was overtaking you.
Yeah, the pain body was totally overtaking me. So, my biggest epiphany about that time was, which I said in my act, it's not that people don't want to love, it's they just don't know how. And once you realize that, you can't be mad at anybody anymore. You can't play that victim role anymore. I mean, all these people in your past who, should have loved you the way you wanted to be loved, or coulda, woulda, shoulda, deserved to be loved. They really wanted to. They just didn't know how, and either did you.
Now, when you say they didn't know how, you're talking about people, the divorce rate, people coming from broken homes.
They didn't know how to problem solve. They didn't know how to give. They didn't know what that, the give and take entails. They didn't know. Here it is in a nutshell for me. And I tried to get this into my ex-girlfriend's head. She never got it. That's why she's my ex-girlfriend. But, a part of it I got from Dale Carnegie about the 3 C's, and the 3 A's I made up myself. Dale Carnegie said, don't do the 3 C's, those which are don't complain, criticize, or condemn.
Your lover, spouse, whatever.
Yes, about anything. Don't complain, don't criticize, don't condemn. That does nothing. The 3 A's, which I came up with, which my ex-girlfriend could never do: allow people to be who they are, accept people for who they are, and appreciate people for who they are.
I think a lot of people have an issue with number 2. I see so many people getting into relationships thinking, well, he or she's okay, but once I'm done with them, I'll fix them, or I'll whatever, right?
That's some real Disney shit. And I mentioned that in my act. It's true, because that's socialization, and that's what Don McGill and Ruiz talks about in his 4 agreements. They call that the matote. That's the socialization. All your life, your school, your parents, just the world has been telling you to do it this way. So the only education we have, and again, when I had my heartbreak time, this is what I came to, is we have no education when it comes to love. The only education we have is fairy tales, all this Walt Disney smoke they blow up your ass about living happily ever after. And I say that I am finally out of the knight in shining armor business, since I finally realized you cannot save, change, or fix anybody except yourself. And that I have no more interest in saving any more damsels in distress. That I'm looking for one of those happy damsels and one who has their own horse, so she can go right off in the sunset beside me,
not behind you,
not weighing my pony down. All right. And then they tell little girls this what I wrote in the book. They tell little girls, someday your prince will come. Well, there are thousands of women over 40 on Match.com will tell you that's some bullshit, right? And that's, again, the socialization, the matote. I remember, and again, I put this in the book, there was a time where these feminists were picketing Cinderella one day in this theater in Hollywood. My first impression when I saw it, I was like, oh, come on, you fucking dykes, go home and iron your flannel shirts and, polish your work boots. It's a fucking cartoon, all right? But then the more I thought about it, I say, hey, these women are right, because they bought into that shit. Someday your prince will come. As little girls, and now they're full-grown adults, and now they're pissed, and you shouldn't put that message out. The message I say that Disney should be telling our kids: if you want to live happily ever after, learn to get happy with yourself first, and then it really doesn't matter who shows up, because you are the love that you're looking for. And I put that on my CD, and that's the thing I like about my CD the most, because that's my main message. And just to get that out there, I don't care who laughs at it or not. That's what I learned. That's the crux of it. You are the love that you're looking for. And, people need to get that.
That is so true. I think everyone can relate to what you're talking to as far as that physical pain. I went through a breakup, and it took me 7 years to get over it. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night and literally having the feeling of pressure on my chest.
Yes.
As if it was hollow, or if something was pressing against my chest. And I would go around and, everyone that knows me says, oh, you're so positive. You're always so happy. And yet I had this feeling of pressure and emptiness on my chest. And it wasn't until I started doing personal development work and working on healing myself that I realized that it was because the way that we create attraction. So for those of you who don't know, the way that you're attracted to people psychologically is that you have certain positive characteristics from your parents, both negative and positive, and then you're attracted to those positive and negative characteristics in a mate to make yourself feel whole. And the purpose of relationship and children and other things is a self-reflection, so you can self-actualize yourself, so you can create yourself and heal yourself to become whole by attracting those and fixing them. Dr. Drew talks about this when he talks about, women who keep attracting the same asshole like their dad, right? They keep attracting it and attracting it and attracting it because they haven't fixed those negative holes from the past, so it keeps coming to them.
Well, that's a phenomena that they have a name for it, and it's called going home.
Yes.
So you're going home. But as Eckhart Tolle would say about relationships, he says that relationships aren't in your life to make you happy. Relationships are in your life to make you conscious.
Yes,
then
absolutely.
Happy is just the byproduct. But nobody's going to come into your life. If you're not happy now, nobody's going to come into your life and then make you happy because, when they go away, you're not going to be happy anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's all, it's all an inside out job. And, when you speak of healing, that's one of the epiphanies I had during that time when I was in that place, that pain place, in Payne State University. That's what I call the true, higher learning institution. But that pain place again. I spaced out. I forgot what I was going to tell you.
You were in a lot of pain, and that's one of your epiphanies that you had.
Went out of my head.
And it'll come back in.
Yeah, that's what happens when you're old people.
Well,
and you've been smoking weed. That's what happens.
Well, you were talking about being a channel, and this is something that I think we all have the capacity to be. You were saying when you wrote your book, it was as if God or some other being was channeling the information through you.
It was a vessel, and that's how I feel about stand-up, and that's what I say.
A lot of stand-ups have said that they feel they don't know where the material's coming from.
Well,
sometimes.
You know what? Before I go down to do the gig, I'm in Vegas or whatever, and before I leave my room, I stand at the door and say, okay, come through me with love and light, and I get out of the way. And there's a comic named A.J. Jamal I was working with. He's a great comic, and I was working with him on the cruise ship, and we're talking about this, and I didn't like the previous set. And he said, you know what I do? I put it all on God. I say, you know what? You know what, Lord? I'm taking the show off. You do this one. So I adopted that. So I would say, Lord, I'm taking this night off. You do it. And then I just surrender. So my ego is totally in the back. And so that really frees me up because it's not me. It's about not me anymore. So it comes through you. But with my book. Yeah, that was a real mystical experience. That whole thing, the whole point, that whole part of my life when I had that broken heart, because that was unprecedented. I had never had a broken heart like that before, where I was in that much pain. I had never jumped in all the way with anybody fully like that.
And when was this? About 10 years ago, you said?
Yeah, it was about 10 years ago. And, it's all perfect. I mean, so many lessons. Oh, that's what I was going to tell you. That's when I realized at that time that this world is in such sore need of healing. That's what it's about here on this earth plane. I think it's about, self-mastery and healing. That's why we're here to heal. And when you really get that concept of healing, what healing entails, you see it all around you, people who need some healing go, man, that person just, poor devil just needs some, really needs some healing, some aloha, some unconditional love. You gotta, because you can never heal anything by criticizing it. You can only shine light on dark places. That's what heals something. But when you criticize and finger point, that doesn't heal anything. That drives it further in. Like when you don't approve of somebody's particular sexual proclivities or whatever, they don't stop doing that. They don't stop, taking it in the ass or whatever. They just go underground with it, and that's what happens. So people just take their shit underground. But if you could learn to leave somebody in love, like the Hawaiian thing is called mahalo pau, And mahalo pau means thanks, I'm done. But thank you for everything you brought into my life. All the lessons I learned, from you. But now I'm done. And that's a lot better than, hey, fuck you, I'm out of here, and you're a fucking asshole, and gee, I don't know what I ever saw in you, and all those recriminations,
I want to talk about something that you mentioned because it's so much needed. I mean, obviously the healing is something that we need as a society in general, because a lot of the things that we're taught, like you said, are not about necessarily love and light and things like that. But you talked about your epiphany. You're sitting in Monterey looking at the ocean. And the reason I want to bring up this story is because, it's very easy to love and be passionate and be happy around positive people. But this world, there's sometimes a lot of negative people, a lot of negative situations, and you still have to be compassionate and love and see people's greatness in a negative situation. And you talked about, having this epiphany by the sea.
Yeah, that's when I was working in Monterey, and again, Monterey is one of the most beautiful places, scenically in the country. And I was sitting there, appreciating all this beauty, and then this inner voice said, you can appreciate this obvious beauty, but can you really look deeper and see beauty in other places where it's not so obvious? And so I told myself, okay, well, I will. I'll work on that, Lord, whatever, acknowledge that voice. So the very next thing my eyes came in contact with when I looked down was a pile of dog shit. And so I decided I would not get up off this bench until I could find something of beauty in that pile of dog shit. It took me a little while, but finally like I told you, the texture maybe and the relief of the artist and this and that. But I managed to find something of beauty in that pile of dog shit. And then I had an epiphany what the lesson was about, that if I could find beauty in a pile of dog shit, how could I not find that in the most difficult person I encounter? And I still fail at that all the time, of course.
But it's a good
goal.
No,
it's a good one. And I remember applying it one time when I was arguing with this woman at the airport, over a ticket. She was a TWA lady or whatever airline it was, and she was just a real bitch. And I had to think, and she actually bared her teeth at me. I reported. I'd never report anybody. But I actually went there. She bared her teeth at me like a vampire, like she was having some kind of mental breakdown, Okay. I'm like, oh my God, like I've never ever bared their teeth at me like an animal. Like she actually did that physically, and and then I thought of that dog shit thing. I said, okay, well, I have to look in there and see what beauty I can find in my Hawaiian spirituality called the Ho'oponopono. One of the main tenets is that the question you have to ask yourself in a situation is, what do I need to love about this situation? So that's a big question. And there's another concept called lokahi, which means to find the commonality within, the people who are got a beef, and if you can't find any commonality, there's always one you can find. And that is, we're just both souls here on this plane, trying to do the best we can. You got to give them that. You go, yeah, Bob's an asshole in every other fucking way. We got nothing in common. But yeah, we do have that in common. That we are just both souls here trying to work it out. Trying to heal, trying to transcend. And so that's the commonality that you could. The bottom line, So.
And I never necessarily completely write someone off, because you just literally never know. I've dealt with people who
you might need to use them later on in life.
No,
no. I need them. Yeah.
No, that's not what I meant. But sometimes people are going through some really dark stuff, and it has nothing to do with you. And
most of the time, it has nothing to do with you, and that's why the Four Agreements is my other secular Bible. And
don't take things personal.
The two go get together. Don't assume and don't take it personally. If you could just do those two, it would save you so much time and energy of not going to crazy town, because they're like first cousins. One, you don't do one without the other. You see somebody on the street that they don't acknowledge you, and then you start assuming, hey, what's up with Bob? He didn't say he's pissed off. Blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden, you got this big fucking story in your head that's nothing but a story that you just made up. First you assumed, and the next thing you did was take it personally. They bang, bang. They go left and right.
Or sometimes someone is mad at you, but the situation really isn't about what it seems like. For example,
it's not about you. Let me interject.
Okay.
Let me interject that.
I got good stories.
Don McGill says to the point that even if they name you and go, you, Rosie Tran, are a fucking idiot, even at that extreme point, it's still not about you because they're still talking through their filters and their lens. If you asked 100, 1,000 people, not everybody would say that. So even if they name you, that person just don't like you. That's about them. It's just about as much about them as it is about you. It's more about them than it is about you. So even in that extreme, when they name you Bob Johnson, you're a fucking asshole, still don't take it personally. But that takes discipline because our ego sucks us in. Your pain body wants the fucking confrontation and the drama. And see, people, that's such a valuable concept to learn for people if you knew the power now to learn about the pain body. And, I've named my pain body Slim Shady. Because they say your pain body is formed when you're at a weak point in your life. When and that for me, that's when I was a skinny little boy, and I was weak, and I was vulnerable as a weak person, skinny little boy, and then then it's your shadow side as well. So Slim Shady, and I've made friends with Slim Shady. You have to make friends with your pain body. You can't You can never heal your pain body by pointing fingers at it and criticizing it. It gets stronger that way.
Exactly.
You have to shine the aloha. You have to shine light on that, and welcome that in. But you know what? That's more of an Eastern thought than a Western thought. Because in the West, our thing is about avoidance. That's why people are so fat and they eat their feelings, and take drugs. And, our thinking here in the West is, avoid the pain, whatever you do, eat this, smoke this, drink that, this medication.
Buy this.
Yeah. In the East, their thing is you invite the pain in, just like, your mother-in-law. You're not happy to see it at your door, but you invite it in and you ask it what it wants, and then when you get the message, it leaves. And before we came in, I was telling you about my fear. Can I share that with you?
Yes.
Because this is a big epiphany, and I was thinking about this on the way here. I ride this Vespa, and a lot of times, I'm riding around stoned, and I'm riding with my headphone, and I'm riding with my music on too. But the reason I ride the thing is because it's just so much fun. Like I told you, it's like riding a jet ski on the land, right? And so anyway, one time I was seized with fear. Just fear came over me. I started getting shit in my head about, we're going to crash and somebody's going to kill me, blah, 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 blah. So I was overcome with fear to the point where my body froze up, and I certainly wasn't having fun. I was paralyzed with fear. And because I was resisting the fear, I was just trying to fight the fear off, but it wasn't working. So I just got in that state. And again, the only reason I do the thing is because it's fun. I certainly wasn't having fun. So I had to, instead of resist the pain, I had to invite the fear in rather. And so I asked the fear, what do you want? Well, fear, what are you trying to tell me? And fear said, I'm telling you, it's dangerous out here. Be very, very careful. Be very alert. And then I said, well, gee, that's a great message, fear. Thank you. Thank you for looking out for me, And so you're an ally. And so when I made that consciousness shift, it was a palpable change in my body. I was rigid and tight when I had the fear. But when I said, hey, thank you, fear, and thanks for that lesson. And you know what, fear? I am going to pay attention. Thank you, And I saw it as like one of my best friends would tell me that, hey, but, and I made it an ally. And even to this day, when that voice starts to creep up in my head when I'm on the Vespa and I hear the fear coming, I thank it before it even gets started. I go, I hear you. I got it. Thank you for being there. You're part of my team now, fear. And thank you. And I got the warning. I'm going to be paying attention. So now fear is part of my crew.
Watching out for you.
Very valuable, because, you could use your fear, if you're not resisting it, but asking it what it wants.
If you're not letting it paralyze you or overcome you.
Just listen to its lesson, what it has to tell you. And it's probably trying to protect you. It might be an overprotected Jewish mother. Okay, I got it. I shut the fuck up and go away. All right, I'm working over here. All right. But again, it's about flowing with things. I don't know if you're familiar with Abraham Hicks.
I am. Yes.
Well, one of the most valuable things I got from her, she says, it's everything that you want is downstream. Don't be palling upstream. And so that's what it is. It's about going with the flow in this lifetime, and everything you do need is downstream. If it's upstream, you don't fucking need it, And for me personally, see, I always claim I just want what's mine by divine right, what it's meant to be for me. And what's meant for me, I'm going to get it. And what's not meant for me, I don't want it. And I'm a very simple person, so I don't need a lot. And I have made a deal with God that he doesn't need to give me everything I want in order to be happy. As long as you have everything you need right now, and I have everything, I have enough money today, I have enough health today, I have enough love today, I got everything I need to be happy today. It's only when you start time traveling that's a recipe for a mind fuck.
Yeah.
And especially when you start asking yourself negative what if questions in the future. What if this doesn't happen? What if it's always this conversation about scarcity and lack?
They said over 7 or 98% of worries never even materialize.
Well, that's one of my favorite Mark Twain lines when he said, I've suffered many terrible things in my life, some of which have actually happened. So, oh, that's so deep. That's fucking deep. That's one of my nuggets that I think of a lot, these things, and that's what they say the lesson for suffering is. And he talks about this in The Power Now. The reason suffering is in your life as a lesson is to teach you that you don't need to suffer. But the paradox is you have to suffer to learn the lesson. You need to get wet to realize you don't need to get wet. I don't have to jump in that fucking pool. I can walk around the puddle. But you need to get in there to realize that. So that's what suffering's about. So much of suffering is self-created, again, with a lot of negative what-if questions in the future. And people do that. And also what he says is so true is that compulsive overthinking is a disease.
It is. And I'm so glad you brought that up. But first, I wanted to actually back up something that you mentioned. Jackson was talking about Eastern versus Western philosophy, avoiding and inviting these type of negative feelings and experiencing them. And actually, that is psychology science 101, that if you avoid your feelings and push them down, they eventually rear their ugly head back up but not the way you think sometimes. And when you deal with feelings and emotions, then actually they dissipate and go away. So what he's saying here is really, really healthy for those of you out there who are thinking, oh, I got to deal with this and I don't want to. Let me just put it in the back door. The sooner that you deal with these issues, the better. Also, Jackson mentioned, even if someone calls you out by name and says, you're an asshole, it has more to do with them than you. I've heard some arguments from some of the podcast listeners who don't really understand this concept. Jackson is not saying that doesn't mean don't take responsibility for yourself. It's all about them. He just means don't take it personal. Is that right?
Yeah, don't take it personally.
Yeah. So still take responsibility.
You could still be an asshole, But don't take it personally. You're just an asshole. Okay.
Still take responsibility for yourself and your reaction for people. If you're being a jerk, don't say, well, that's all about him. It has nothing to do with me. Still look at yourself and keep examining yourself for that self-healing, but don't take it personal.
Right. Well, you need your own. Everybody just needs their own approval. That's what that's about. But again, what we talked about, living well is an art form. We're all artists out here. That's what, Don McGill talks about. They call them spirit artists down there, and that's what it's about, being a spirit artist. And that's what we're all doing out here, creating. And the bottom line for me is just about love. Everything's about love. Everybody wants love. That's why people want money and power. They just want some love. They
want it to buy love,
they think that's a means to an end. They think, but the end is always about just people want to be loved and approved of and
heard and validated.
And all that and but you have to give that to yourself first. You don't wait for the world to give it to you to then be happy. It's a inside out job.
And if you want to start right now, if you think, well, I have nothing, I'm broke, I'm a loser, whatever, I can't give myself any love, I don't have anything, start with gratitude. That's something that I do as a daily practice. I look at 3 things in my life that I can be grateful for. And even if I'm having a completely awful day, I can always find 1 or 2 or 3 things to be grateful for. And it definitely lifts me out. Especially in America, if you're listening from a place in America, we are the 1%. We are wealthier than 99% of the rest of the world who's living in dire poverty. So at least you can say, well, I have water, I have food, I'm not, homeless or whatever. And so there's always something you can be grateful for, and that can help you get out of your head. Like you were talking about the over-analysis paralysis that we get, the stories that we make up, the overthinking that we create.
Yeah, there's this book called the Kahana Pono, Kahanapono, Kahanapono, Kahanapono. And one of their exercises is called the 5 mahalos, the 5 thank yous. And that's when you're in that place that you think about 5 things you're grateful for. And, that helps you get into space, because you can't be depressed and grateful at the same time. You can't hold two opposite thoughts in your brain. So if you're being grateful for that moment, you can't be depressed in that moment. It's impossible, So, but, they have this great concept of Hawaiian spirituality. And their metaphor is either you're in the canoe or you're out of the canoe. If you're in the canoe, that means you're in pono, you're in harmony, body, mind, spirit. But if you're out of the canoe, you're in the water, and you can't live out in the water for long. You can't survive out there. So that's like being in the ditch. So the whole thing is getting back in the canoe. How do you get in the canoe? And that's what this book is. It's all tools of how do you get back in the canoe, right? Because even a physical canoe is hard to get back into. If you're just on the lake and there's a canoe, you have to know how to get back in the fucking canoe, or you'll tip it over,
or it flips over. Yeah,
right. So the Kahanapono is all of, and it's such a wonderful metaphor about getting back in the canoe. But see, most people don't even know they're out of the canoe. That's one of the first things you'll learn to distinguish. Hey, I'm fucking out of the canoe, and that's progress. Because
so what are some of the signs that they're out that people don't realize?
Well, whenever I don't know if you know who Byron Katie is, but she has this book called Loving What Is, and it's on YouTube. She has a class with Oprah on there, and and if you're suffering, your natural state is joy, and if you're not in that state, even if it's mild irritation, you don't have to be suffering like, somebody just died, but even if you're just bugged, well, that's not your joy place. So you're not totally 100% off. Like if somebody died, you're like fucking devastated, but you're still, you're suffering because you're irritated. Somebody pissed you off.
You're not happy. You're not.
Yeah. Yeah. In that moment, you're not in that joy place. And so if you're out of that place, then you're out of the canoe, because when you're walking or bopping around and everything's fucking cool, you're in the canoe, you're in pono. And so it's being able to really monitor your inner self and go, hey, where am I? Am I in the canoe or not out of the canoe? I have a friend of mine who's, brilliant, went to Harvard and got a PhD at Stanford, all that stuff. And she just told me today, I'm finally distinguishing when I'm out of the canoe and when I'm in the canoe. And that's just huge for me. And, now I know when I'm not in there. Now I could make the effort to get back in by using these tools, like the 5 mahalos is one of them. Think about another one is called hello, lesson, thank you, teacher. When this thing happens to you, your main thought is, geez, hello, lesson. And thank you, teacher, whoever, this asshole. Instead of going, that fucking asshole, what's this happening?
You go,
but he's
yes,
your teacher.
What can I learn from this?
Yeah, and that gets you into pono. That's a pono. These are called pono activators, how to get back in the canoe. That already gets you in such a higher place of consciousness. Like, hey, what's the lesson here for me? You're not taking it personally. It's a higher place. Instead of, hey, that fucking asshole, how does that, instead of go to a victim place, a blaming place, a making wrong play, a fault-finding place, it's all about you and your growth. So, the 5 mahalos and that, what I just told you, there's a bunch of them, and they're all great. And if you know these things, one of them is called Choose Your Illusion, which is great. And the premise is that everything is an illusion, so choose yours.
We're in the Matrix.
Yeah, there you go. So, yeah, all that stuff. And you know what? It says, the reason I love that book so much, again, the Kahanapono, and you can look up Pono on the internet, or Huna, which is a Hawaiian spirituality, Huna. And it says everything the power now says, except it says it in like 50 pages instead of 200 pages or whatever. I mean, a
lot of this is ancient knowledge that we've kind of forgotten with our crazy society, right?
Right.
It's thousands of years old.
Certainly older than the Bible, way older than the Bible. Yeah, this is ancient wisdom. And again, the 4 Agreements with Don McGill, that's Toltec wisdom. And that's what they call a Toltec means spirit artist. So they consider themselves they call themselves spirit artists. And again, that wisdom is ancient. And that's what I came to appreciate when the Kahanapono came into my life by coincidence or synchronicity, whatever, when I went to Hawaii. And that gave me a real new appreciation for ancient wisdom. I mean, history, recorded history is just like 2 weeks old.
In the span of things.
Yeah, I mean, and people, we've got lost civilizations going on and shit. People knew some deep shit that's been long forgotten. Now we're watching fucking Dancing with the Stars. shit like that.
There was like 5,000 years, I think, of Mayan sacred books that were burned by the Spaniards and other cultures who had this wisdom passed down for thousands and thousands and thousands of years that was lost. So there's definitely information out there that we can use in our modern day and still applies. I want to.
Well, what gets me, is that there's just a lack of interest in most people. Like when I've read this material, for me, I drank it up because maybe I needed the healing, but I drank it up like a man on fire sinks a bucket of water. All this stuff. And when I would read it, I would just marvel. I go, how come everybody's not reading this shit? Everybody's, how come people are not flocking to this shit? This is what truly matters. This stuff, all that other stuff, the material world is just, an illusion, and I talk to people. This is my favorite subject, so I could talk for hours on it, but I never approach people with it who aren't ready for it or have no interest because they're just not ready for it, and it's just not their time. We're all in a certain place on the path, and they're not at that place yet, But it's all about self-mastery to me. That's what it's about: getting control of yourself and loving yourself. That's what it's really about: learning how to love yourself unconditionally. And that's what aloha. That's what the aloha spirit is about.
I want to talk to you about spirituality because you're a comedian and you're also, from what I've gathered, a very intelligent person. And I noticed that a lot of people who are creative types or writers or comedians and very intelligent tend to dismiss a lot of this stuff and go more towards atheism and saying that this stuff isn't logical and this stuff isn't, practical. And I find the opposite to be true because, a lot of times, first of all, they're now doing so many studies on a lot of this ancient wisdom and showing that there is scientific research to back the positive effects of gratitude, like we talked about, and right. Getting out of your head and other things. How has this information helped you grow and learn and open your mind actually to becoming more thoughtful and more intelligent in your thinking?
Well, first of all, it has nothing to do with religion. So you can be an atheist and totally embrace this, It has nothing to do with religion. As a matter of fact, I'm a former atheist. And I think if you are a free-thinking person, you have to go through atheism, I
agree. I was a former atheist as well.
Yeah. So you go, because to me, that whole,
society,
the whole
right?
Bible's, I still don't believe in the Bible, And the Bible's one of the most boring books I've ever read in my life. Seriously, and I'm a reader, and I've read every thick Russian novel there is.
War and Peace.
I've read War and Peace. I've read Crime. I've read them all. I've read Crimes and Punishment. I've read Anna Karenina. I've read all those books, and because I'm a bookworm, right? And I've tried to read the Bible on more than one occasion, and I cannot get through. I just have to, like all boring books, I can't finish. I have to just go to the last page, see what happened, and turns out everything's gonna be all right. So. But all the these and the those and the you begat this and I can't even get behind that shit. So anyway, this knowledge and this information transcends religion, has nothing to do with religion whatsoever. The closest thing this would come to is Star Wars. May the Force be with you.
I just wanted to make that clarification because sometimes when atheists hear the word spiritual or spiritual knowledge, they kind of shut down. Or that's been my experience.
Well, that's ignorance because we're all spiritual beings, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. That doesn't make it less true. If you don't know it, so what, But again, I know people shy away from that. But they're just, for me, I believe there's more invisible than visible going on, And I just had this debate with somebody. They were saying, well, they were an atheist. And I was saying, because I had a near-death experience with my heart I told you about, and I was saying the reason I didn't die because it wasn't my time to die. And I don't believe anybody dies before their time, whether you're 1 or 100. I think it's kind of all sort of written. And this person was vehement that, you just die, has nothing to do with anything, and they were just a straight atheist, and they, said they got offered their information from some book by a guy named Richard Dawkins, who I've never heard of. And I'm saying... And, he was so condescending. Well, you got to read a book. And I'm saying, hey, yeah, you just read one book, all right?
I've read like 50.
Dude, you need to keep reading, okay? You can't let any one book say, hey, this is the truth, and that's it. If you're that close-minded, you got to keep investigating this stuff. But for me, the question is, how big is your world? With some people, you can talk to about multidimensionality. You got a big fucking world when you talk about multi-dimensions. Other people, that's just straight crazy talk. Reincarnation, that's just straight crazy talk to some people. But that notion's older than Christ, and it actually was in the Bible and was edited out of the Bible at one time. They didn't want that shit in there, right? But so all this knowledge goes back to way before Christ or any kind of religion. I'm not religious at all. As a matter of fact, I always say I just thank God we had no religion in my house. Because that would have really fucked me up. So I think all free thinkers have to start out as being atheists. And I always said that Jesus was just Santa Claus for adults. As far as, like, hey, if it be good, you're going to get the present. He knows who's naughty and nice, and that is the big metaphor. But I believe in the Christ consciousness. I don't believe that he was the Son of God any more than I am or you are. I don't believe in the virgin birth. I don't believe in Noah and all these fairy tales and all this shit. But I do believe in the power of love and in forgiveness and some of these principles that that were taught way before Jesus was around. So has nothing to do. I think it's about aligning yourself. Where you're going to align yourself with the, either you're a Jedi Knight or you're unconscious. And if you're unconscious, you're on the dark team. You're on the, and I'm on the light. I'm on the light side.
So I want to talk about some of the information in your book because we have to wrap up soon. And you say, sometimes I'll see a guy on TV or I'll see someone just going through it. And I wish that they had the knowledge that I could share with them to help them through this breakup. So what is some of the information that you suggest for people who are really going through some severe emotional pain body regarding relationships?
Well, I would first say to trust your life and know that it's by no accident. And for me, I came to realize after the fact that every relationship that didn't work out for me that I really wanted it to have but just didn't work out every time, and I'm talking about 100% of the time, turned out to be a huge blessing where I thank God later on, thank God that didn't work out. Because then I realized, what? The universe knows what's better for me than I know what's better, what's good for me. I thought I know what was good, but thank God every relationship that didn't work out, I see the blessing in it now. And, once you get on the other side of your heartache and pain, you'll see that, And so this time it's all about you, though, about learning your lessons and about loving yourself, and again, no external will be your salvation. This person's not going to be the answer to your problems, Again, it comes back to you are the love that you're looking for. And the other thing I realized too, about before you get your heart broke, that's the thing. This book is a lot about preventative. When you see a hole in the ground, you fucking walk around it.
Yeah.
and for me, I think one of the most valuable things is again a Zen principle about paying attention. It's all about paying attention, especially in the beginning.
The red flags, you mean?
Yes, and all those, and a lot of times we ignore those, and when, my favorite line from the Simon and Garfunkel song, The Boxer, says, all lies and jest, still a man hears what he wants to hear and he disregards the rest. So people hear and see what they want to see and hear, but, you really have to pay attention to those, to everything, especially in the beginning, what people say. When people go, oh, I'm so crazy. And then they go, oh, no, you're not crazy. And then they pull some really crazy shit on you. And you go, oh, man, they told me they were crazy. Why the fuck was I listening? Because, you weren't listening, you weren't paying attention. And the other thing I came to learn that's so important, I think, that just like in real estate, they say, one of the great principles is location, location, location. I think in relationships, it's identity, identity, identity. Who is that person behind those eyes you're dealing with? And you have to find out the sickest thing about that person and see if you can accept that, and then go ahead. But people are expert at hiding that sick shit, especially the first couple months.
Or they put on the dating face.
That's why you got to pay attention, especially in the beginning, and go with your gut feeling. But it is about paying attention and finding out who that person is, because a lot of times, like they say, you can't be betrayed. You can only be betrayed by somebody who's close to you. Enemies don't betray you because you never trust them in the first place. Betrayal is when somebody goes against your trust, especially when somebody's close to you. And in the hero's journey, I don't know if you're familiar with that, Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. and they study that at Disney. Now Disney executives have to read this book about the hero's journey, because it's all about the steps that you go through. Like Star Wars. There's a hero who gets called to adventure. You get called to go out there and do something. Like Luke Skywalker, but then the hero refuses the call. But then some shit happens that it makes you do it. Like his uncle dies, or his aunt, his parents
Something
die.
pushes him towards
pushes you out there, and then all these things and characters, archetypes that you meet, like the ally and the shapeshifter, all these people. And the shapeshifter in the hero's journey is a lot of times your romantic partner, this person who was, you're closest to you, and then they just turn into a demon on you, And so again, it was about identity. Who was you? God, I would never thought they'd do that. Well, you didn't know that person well enough. You weren't paying attention. And one of my favorite quotes about that is from a Southern writer named Eudora Welty. She was a Southern writer, and she said, getting to know somebody is like developing a picture in a dark room that all you have to do is wait and watch, and people will reveal themselves.
People do reveal themselves, and they typically reveal themselves very early on. And that's why a lot of times when not just you, Jackson, but other people, myself included, get out of relationships, you look back and you go, they kind of did that in the beginning, or they kind of said, remember when, so-and-so said she was crazy, like you said, or so-and-so said they were jealous.
Right.
And a lot of times we want love so desperately because we're not healed inside that we say, oh, well, I knew he was jealous, but I thought, I can handle it. Or I knew she was crazy, but I thought, oh, well.
Yes, and my metaphor for that, I say it's like picking a partner is buying clothes off the rack, all right?
Okay.
If you don't like how it fits, the price, the size, the style, well, you know what? Leave it there because it fits somebody else perfectly. Don't get it home, try to tailor it to your liking and shit, all right? Just leave it there. Find something that fits you. And that's what it's about, finding a fit, finding a true fit, But again...
And some people are so desperate for clothes, they'll just take anything off the rack, and that's not
anything,
good.
And it doesn't fit. And
it has a stain on it.
Fitting, it's too big, it's too small. And what do? They keep it on, and they complain about it.
Exactly.
And they make the other person wrong.
They go, this is a really ugly yellow shirt, and I wanted a pink shirt. Well, you bought a yellow shirt!
Yeah, and what they do is they do the 3 C's. They complain, they condemn, and they criticize, instead of doing the 3 A's, accepting, allowing, and appreciating. So again... about finding your fit. So if the person doesn't fit, fucking move on and let them find somebody else. But yeah, the whole identity thing was big, and I'm very aware of people's character that I look at and try to get a vibe on that. That's what it's about. And again, finding the sickest thing, because and then sex has a lot to do with it too. Finding somebody who's sexually compatible with you, I think, is really huge. Mark Twain again talked about this, about if you're a tortoise, you have to find another tortoise. I'm paraphrasing here. So you have to find another tortoise, because if you're a tortoise, because tortoise, they only fuck once a year. They get sexy like once a year. If you're a tortoise married to a rabbit, things are not going to work out.
But tortoise stay together for life, for over 100 years.
Yeah,
sometimes.
So find yourself a tortoise. Don't hook it with a rabbit and go, Jesus, man, they want to fuck all the time. Or
go, that rabbit's a hoe.
Or do all that stuff. So again, it's about finding your match. But for me, again, my thing, I don't know, my people might see it as passive, but, my thing now, again, especially since my near-death experience, my only goal and ambition is, again, to live aloha and live my highest truth and see what shows up. See who actually physically shows up at my door. And the latest person to do that? You. You actually showed up in my driveway.
I'm here.
Yes. And that's what happened with my girlfriend now. She actually showed up, And so I look at that, who actually physically shows up, and what they bring. And the reason I agreed to do this with you is because... we start talking about positivity. And when you told me that thing about your consciousness was about, giving on stage and not being bugged if they don't get it or not, it's more about you, contributing, giving, that's really a beautiful thing. And that's too rare. And so I'm here to support anybody with that consciousness. That's the message that needs to be put out there. It's a paradigm that needs to be changed, instead of this taking all the time. And, because that doesn't make anybody happy. That gets people desperate. And
it does. And it causes a lot of pain. I've seen a lot of people, like I said, in my 12 years in stand-up, which isn't that long in the scheme of stand-up, but I've had friends, shoot up to quick stardom, and it doesn't bring them happiness. What it does, because they're focusing on it so much, is more anxiety because their fear of losing the stardom, and then they got to keep it up and keep it up and keep it up and keep it up, and they're not realizing, first of all, stardom and fame can be an amazing thing if you use it for good. They are now role model and can be using it for good, but instead they're feeding their own little ego, and so what happens is 1 + 1 = disaster.
Well, that's one of those be careful what you wish for things. You know, I know some people that the worst thing that ever happened to them is they got some success, and now they're dead. They're actually not with us anymore. And I think about them sometimes, and I think, geez, you know, the best thing that could have happened to them if they would have just not been
never got it,
quote unquote, successful.
Yeah.
But again, we have to define the term success. What is success to, you know? So everybody has to me, success has always been about living life on my own terms. Like I told you, I always say that I live the life of a millionaire without the million. And I tell you, my friend said, no, you live the life of a trust fund millionaire. And the regular millionaire's got to get out there and do some shit and keep it going. But, so I've lived life on my own terms all my life. Stand-up comedy has literally saved my life, literally and figuratively saved my life, because I don't know how to do anything else. I've been doing this all my adult life, and I'm 57 now. So I've been doing this 7 years or something. So, I'm just in it for the love of it now.
Well, that is some amazing knowledge and information from Jackson. His upcoming book is called Man on Fire. And guys, where can people find you, Jackson? Are you on Facebook? Where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, and you could find me at the YMCA in Hollywood playing basketball. Yeah, so Facebook, Jackson Perdue, and, like that. And
that's it. And do you have any upcoming shows or?
Well, I'm going to be at the Pachanga Casino in a couple of weeks, and I work at the Laugh Factory on a regular basis in Hollywood and in Long Beach, and my next gigs are. I work in Vegas a lot at the Tropicana there, and the Riviera and Sin City Comedy Club at Planet Hollywood.
He also has a CD called Half White Trash.
Half White Trash, baby.
Guys, this has been Out of the Box Podcast with Rosie Tran. Don't forget to visit outoftheboxpodcast.com and click on the support button. We're now accepting Bitcoins and Litecoins for all of you alt currency users, and it helps keep the podcast going. As always, we're on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. And don't forget to visit our sponsor, hugmetease.com. Spread love, give a hug, hugmetease.com. This has been Out of the Box Podcast with Rosie Tran.